Welcome back to Big Mouth and welcome to the dceu Daily. You can tag me and follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. On today's show, we're going to be reading some Snyder articles. We're going to be reading some articles explaining and talking about James Gunn's The Suicide Squad trailer. And to end today's video, I'm going to be unleashed, in my opinion, of the dceu, and you will not want to miss that, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever else you identify as. I respect you all. I take you all individually. I love all human beings, and you're all welcome to watch this channel and watch my videos. Of course you are. Right. Zack Snyder's Justice League redeems some of the DCEU's biggest controversies. This is by Molly Edwards of Games Radar. The DCEU has had its fair share of controversy. Really, Molly? I didn't realise. Since launching in 2013, and while there's been dozens of cancelled movies and a fair few critical duds, the most controversial release has no doubt been the theatrical cut of Justice League. After taking over from Zack Snyder throughout the reshoots, Joss Whedon cut huge chunks of the movie, heavily reducing Cyborg's role. I'm going to stop there for a minute, and we'll continue this in a minute. I'm on my PlayStation 3, I've got all the DCEU trailers, basically, it's called, and I've titled it the DCEU Multiverse. And I was watching some of the early Justice League trailers, and some of them have got Zack shots and Joss shots in the same trailer. It's fucking ridiculous. Reducing Cyborg's role and changing Superman and Batman's story arcs. With the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League, however, many of these characters have finally been redeemed, thanks to the director finally being allowed to show his true vision of these superheroes. Among the criticisms levelled at Man of Steel was Superman's characterization. Henry Cavill's hero was not the sunny Superman many might have expected, and he became even more downcast in Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. If you actually go back to Man of Steel, he smiles a lot. There's a friendly kind of banter around him and his mum and Lois. He's actually more smiley and more Superman than he's ever been. Now, what she says about BVS is absolutely spot on. He is a smiley, happier Superman in Man of Steel. But then we go from that, and it's a much more somber movie. I love the movie, right? I don't have an issue, but I can understand why people were kind of surprised and taken back, because I was as well. Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice, but Snyder's Justice League gave us the version of the character we've been waiting for. This Clark Kent is comfortable with being a hero, has a smile on his face, like Man of Steel by the way, as he helps the League fight Steppenwolf, and even has a one-liner prepared. But are one-liners important? This is the problem the MCU has given us. Are one-liners important? No, they're not. Superman hasn't seemed so joyful since he first took flight in Man of Steel. Is this a complete 180 then? Not really. It's the culmination of a character arc that began with the first movie. It's no surprise that a Superman struggling to find his place in the world in Man of Steel, then having that world turn on him in Batman vs Superman might not be so carefree. In the Snyder Cut, the situation is easier to deal with. There's an intergalactic threat and not an ethical consideration in sight when he cheerfully punches the villain into the path of Wonder Woman's sword. Likewise, Zack Snyder's Justice League caps off Batman's journey. The Bruce Wayne we meet in Batman v Superman, played by Ben Affleck, is darker than usual, savagely beating his foes and branding them. He's also beyond cynical. Superman's sacrifice, though, changes something in him. Bruce tells Wonder Woman at the hero's funeral that men are still good. And in the Snyder Cut, we see that belief in action. The death of Superman drives him to unite the League. And even when Supes comes back from the dead not quite right, this new Batman tells Alfred he has faith that he'll return to help them anyway. Towards the end of the movie, he has criminals tied up rather than beaten to a pulp. His former brutality was a point of contention, but Batman had to start at rock bottom, so he had room to grow. His arc seems intended to be one of the redemption, and thanks to comments from Snyder on Justice League 2, we know his story would have eventually ended with the requisite hero sacrificed too. That's the thing. It's a deconstruction for a reconstruction. And this is what the normies and the basics never understood. I understand why they didn't understand it. You can only judge what you see, but you've also got to give things a chance, right? Then there's everything the Snyder Cut improved on from the theatrical Justice League. Of its missteps, Henry Cavill's upper lip. One of the most egregious was how much Ray Fisher's Cyborg was sidelined. The Snyder Cut restored the character to his rightful place at the heart of the movie. Cyborg can be seen coming to terms with his traumatic car crash and saves the world thanks to that acceptance, a journey entirely exercised from 2017's Justice League. This introduction of a new black hero with such powerful arc of self-belief completely overwrites the Cyborg of 2017, who in all was just kind of there. Finally, the Snyder Cut made time for one last character. Criticism of Suicide Squad's Joker targeted his unusual look, including the damaged tattoo on his forehead. What is it with that damaged tattoo and people getting upset about it? I never really understood that, to be honest with you. As well as Leto's acting style, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, Joker looks completely different. With longer hair, no grill, no tattoos, his conversation with Batman alludes to their shared past, fleshing out this incarnation of one of pop culture's most iconic hero-villain relationships in a matter of minutes. Fans reacted incredibly positively, which seemed unthinkable back in 2016 when Suicide Squad first graced the big screen. Though it should be noted that director David Ayer has claimed terrifying Joker scenes with incredible acting were cut from the movie. Now we know that Leto can more than deliver, and the snapshot of his Joker glimpsed in the Snyder Cut definitely justifies his casting. Zack Snyder's Justice League places a satisfying bow on Snyder's DCEU trilogy, while still leaving a few tantalising glimpses at what we might get if Warner Brothers does decide to continue the Snyderverse, big if, which seem highly unlikely. Time will tell if we ever see these newly developed characters again, but if not, at least the Snyder Cut offers a satisfying conclusion to their paths. I couldn't agree more. I think she's absolutely spot on. It's the Justice League Snyder Cut. Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut is one of those movies, in an odd way, really. It's very different to Batman vs. Superman, because Batman vs. Superman is your Dark Knight. It is the Empire Strikes Back. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a dark middle tale. But then, as Chris Terrio teased back in 2015, this would be a lighter movie, a more inspirational movie. I'm still not sure if this is Zack's complete vision on Justice League, or are some of the lighter, funnier moments something that he was forced to put in. I guess we'll never know. He hasn't really alluded to that. So it's very, very interesting. But Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut is a perfect movie for the fans. Yeah, nothing made by human beings and human hands is perfect, of course. But I think as a form of entertainment, it's absolutely fantastic. In the way it's shot and made, and Junkie XL's wonderful music, it's a sensational experience. It's another Washington Post positive article about Zack Snyder, so I thought we could read this out together. Opinion. The success of the Snyder Cut shows nice guys can finish first, and that we want them to. Absolutely. Nice guys, nice women, nice people all around. It doesn't matter who they are. We want nice people to do well. We want people to do the right things in life, who are good people, to, get some reward. What happened to Zack Snyder, not only with his daughter, but the way he was treated, which I'm going to deal with at the end of this video, by the way, so please stay tuned for that, was despicable. Opinion by Sonny Bunch. It's nice to see the good guys win one for a change. I speak, of course, of Zack Snyder, whose 4-hour cut of Justice League debuted on HBO Max last week, to praise from critics and audiences alike. Zack Snyder's Justice League is the culmination of years-long grassroots effort to convince the executives at Warner Brothers that his iteration of the film was worth finishing and releasing after Joss Whedon was brought in to co-write and partially direct the film. The acclaim for the movie is a bit surprising, but perhaps critics are relieved to be able to celebrate something big and good and idiosyncratic. That was created by someone who is, by all accounts, a decent guy, forced to overcome serious personal tragedies. Sorry, I get emotional. With Zack Snyder, I get emotional with what he went through, so please excuse me. Over the past few years, Snyder's behaviour in an impossible situation is a wonderful example of dignity that's worth celebrating no matter how you feel about the superhero movies. Absolutely. Dignity is the word, everyone, isn't it? Dignity. The things people have called him, a racist, this, a woman hater, lies. This man amplifies women and makes them it's not about making them look beautiful, that's not important, but gives them a soul and an inner strength, like he did with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. The man is the opposite of toxic, and some of the toxic things said about him and the way he's dealt with it, absolutely beautiful. Following the critical drubbing of the theatrical cut of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice and the underwhelming box office, WB execs were nervous about what Snyder was doing on Justice League. When they saw an early cut of the movie, they panicked, bringing in Whedon to rework the script. Following the death of Zack and Deborah Snyder's daughter Autumn by suicide, Snyder stepped away from the project entirely. Throughout the film's post-production struggles and initial release, Snyder kept up a brave face. He didn't demand his name be taken off the movie, despite the fact that, according to him, he had nothing to do with roughly 75% of what appeared on screen. He didn't trash the movie or tell audiences to stay at home. Instead, over the years, he released dribs and drabs of information to his committed fan base via a small social media network called Vero. These nuggets kept the grassroots energized and active, but not at the expense of Snyder's employer or his replacement. And there's a sadness to the story that makes your heart break for the director, whose producing partner and wife Deborah and their family. It's such a lightning strike in the centre of this whole saga. Snyder told Vanity Fair, and in a lot of ways it has informed everything we've done since. As a father myself, it's impossible to imagine the pain that a death of a child would cause. It's just a very emotional story, it really is. And I can't help but get emotional about it. But it's the happy warrior sensibility that is Snyder's most attractive trait. His winking ability to poke a little fun at himself and his work even while taking it totally seriously. That shines through in his chat with the critic Dave Itzkoff, where Snyder suggests his film would make a fine double feature with the mellow indie flick First Cow. Thanks to their shared aspect ratio of puckishly compares the Snyder Cut to Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. For once we get to celebrate a win by a Hollywood director around whom there's never been a whiff of impropriety or cruelty. As dark as his films are, and as frequently as some like the underrated Sucker Punch have been slapped with the sexist tag, Snyder himself has never been accused of being anything other than a professional. His stars love him. I can't speak highly enough about him, Gerard Butler, star of Snyder's 300, told The Hollywood Reporter recently. As a director, as a creative, as a kind, excited, passionate guy. It is just emotional to talk about Snyder, isn't it? This is a wonderful article, by the way, isn't it? That's in stark contrast to Whedon. Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel co-star Charisma Carpenter last month accused him of years of on-set abuse. Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman herself, told the Los Angeles Times that her experience with Whedon wasn't the best one, and she took it to the higher-ups, and they took care of it. Whedon was also accused of racial bias by Justice League star Ray Fisher for the systematically stripping black characters from the film or reducing their impact. We're all tired of having to argue the art versus artist dispute, of trying to set aside, disgust all allegations of misconduct to appreciate something beautiful. Philip Roth, whose biography is now making the rounds, was a great novelist, but endlessly relitigating his personal life is exhausting, even for supporters. Snyder is a modern nice guy, the sort who bros out at the gym while going to work every day with his wife. We want a guy who makes moody movies, yet is a pleasure to be around on set. A guy who can make demonstrating how to snap a neck a goofy feel-good meme. It is perhaps the same reason that Ted Lasso has emerged as one of the most beloved shows of the post-anti-hero era. Finally, nice guys are finishing first. 3 years ago, I mourn the end of the Snyder era of superhero movies. Never have I been happier to be wrong. And I'm glad the rest of the world is catching up to his greatness and his decency. Wow. That, my friends, has got me really emotional. As I said, it's really emotional to talk about Zack Snyder. He is a nice guy. He is a talent. He is a visionary. And what he's been through is disgusting. And it all could have been settled in such a better way. But there's so many reasons why Zack went through what he went through. First of all, from audiences that have said terrible things about him. It just shows you what a polarizing vision he has. And I would never defend anyone calling him the names that they have. That's despicable, and that's taking it personally. Now, in the polarizing discussions about the films and about Snyder, I kind of understand. We did read Action Comics as children. We did see Superman the movie, and it is a shock to see what he did with the character in Superman versus Batman. By the way, I hated the fact that Batman gets his name first in Batman v Superman when I first heard the title, Batman versus Superman. That is a polarizing movie. It split the whole world. It's a sensational conversation. There's no question about that. Now, Andy, whose surname I can't pronounce from Screen Rant, is doing an article here, or who has done an article here, and I don't agree with this, but I'm going to read it to you. We're going to have a discussion about it, because that's what these YouTube channels should be about, discussions. It's not about me saying something and you going, yes, Mick, you're right, Mick. No, let's have an argument, let's have a debate, right? Why Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3 should be animated sequels, I couldn't agree less. Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3 should get animated sequels in order to complete the Snyderverse trilogy following the Snyder Cut. Now, this is a discussion that's been around for many years. I even fell out with Davey Pinar about this, and now he has me blocked on Twitter, unfortunately, because I like Davey and I like what he does. With Zack Snyder's Justice League not getting a live-action continuation, Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 should instead be turned into animated sequels to properly wrap up the trilogy. The Snyder Cut restores everything that was removed and reshot by Joss Whedon for the theatrical cut. All the characters that were either removed or rewritten, as well as the missing plots, got their due properly, as the films show what was in Snyder's actual vision. While reception has been mostly positive, Warner Brothers CEO Ann Sarnoff has confirmed that the Snyder Cut is the end of the road for the Snyderverse. Despite the fact that Zack Snyder's Justice League was only the opening part of a trilogy, Sarnoff stated the studio is moving forward with other DC properties and stories. While it hasn't been expressly revealed how the film is doing analytically across HBO Max, I wonder why, and international platforms, the indication is that it's been a success. The director always had plans and ideas that would be executed in Justice League 2 and Justice League 3. Which would have seen the continuation of the Nightmare saga that was set up in Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. Sarnoff's comments have received mixed responses, as there's still a passionate fandom that wishes to see Warner Brothers restore the Snyderverse. By passionate responses, do you mean that the Restore the Snyderverse hashtag was trending with over 1 million tweets a couple of days ago? If that's what you mean, there's no mixed response. We are now supported by public figures hashtagging Restore the Snyderverse. There's no mixed response here, Andy, whose surname I can't pronounce. Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 may have lost their chance to come to life in live action for the time being. However, Warner Brothers could consider letting Snyder properly finish his trilogy, and one option for that would be to adapt them as animated films. There's no denying that the studio is taking the DCEU in new directions with other characters and franchises, but there's no way to hide the fact that the Snyder Cut was successful, as a lot of general audiences members saw that this was a massive improvement from what was given in 2017 theatrical film. The animation route would also make production easier, given Snyder's cast consists of actors who all have incredibly busy schedules. Andy, whose surname I can't pronounce. Everyone has busy schedules, mate. Should we make everything animated? Given the global pandemic is still affecting TV and movie productions, it's not, Andy. It's not. Moving forward with an animated format would be beneficial. It will certainly take a few years before everything is truly back to normal, including how TV and film are produced. Yes, and they're doing it. It's working, right? Very few delays. It's not a reason to go animated, Andy. It'd be easier to get the cast members back for voice recordings as opposed to getting everyone scheduled for not one, but 2 long film productions. If it was in live action, animation has also come a long way over the last few decades, where Justice League sequels could look more amazing than the average cartoon design. There are so many options for animation style that Snyder could choose from, or even create his own, to truly capture his remaining Justice League stories. First of all, Zack is a perfectionist. He would want to do this in a CGI format. So it wouldn't be exactly cartoons or animated even. It would be as expensive as the film, or nearly. It's not something I hold to. It's not something... I would love to see new titles in the Snyderverse as animated form. That's great, but not instead of live action. Due to the controversies surrounding Warner Bros. Following 2017's Justice League, giving Snyder a chance to wrap up his story through animation is the best option for everyone. No, I couldn't agree less, Andy. If animated HBO Max films aren't optional, DC Comics could always try to adapt the sequels as graphic novels. No, Andy. In an interview with Comic Book Movie, Snyder said he's open to the idea of finishing his trilogy as a comic. Snyder had also pitched to DC's Jim Lee of doing a mini-comic series focused on Ben Affleck's Batman and Jared Leto's Joker, while also telling the story of the DCEU's Dead Robin. So it's not like they haven't tried to find other options to conclude Snyder's DC universe. Even if Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 don't happen on the big screen, hopefully Warner Bros. And DC will consider animated or graphic novel sequels. Andy's just trying to find another way, and I respect that. For me, it's not something I want to see. I will not buy comics that finish off the story. I'm not interested. Now, in terms of animation, if Zack did that, of course, I'd be all over it. I'd be very excited with it, and hopefully Junkie XL would do the music. We're talking what ifs here, because it's unlikely to happen, right? But my preference, personally, let's start again. My preference personally is to have these films made in live action. It is, after all, a live action universe. So my answer to Andy's article is a big fat no. So most of you by now will know that I did a video reaction to James Gunn's The Suicide Squad trailer, and I said to you I didn't like it. That's what the video was even called. I have seen it many more times, and it is growing on me. I think my reaction now is, and I think this is why sometimes we should let things fester, but I did want to do a reaction for you guys and everybody else, but I think it's a lot better than I thought it was when I first reacted to it. I think what I like about it is the second half of the trailer. More action. It looks really cool. I love that bit when Harley's around that kind of red kind of background and she's looking really kind of uncomfortable and unhinged. I like when Harley and some of the team are jumping from building to building. I think that's awesome. King Shark looks sensational. Can't wait to see more Peter Capaldi. So there are some really good things in that trailer. And just because I didn't like the trailer, it doesn't mean I'm not going to like the film. Look, you know what you're going to get from James Gunn. It's no good me criticising what James Gunn does. James Gunn does what James Gunn does, just like what Zack Snyder does. So I don't believe it's really logical to go at James Gunn for being James Gunn. He makes really entertaining movies about groups of people in comic book universes, and that's fine and that's okay. This is going to be a dirty dozen kind of big mission where everyone doesn't survive, and I think some of the deaths are going to be pretty shocking for everyone. I also think there's characters in this film that we haven't seen yet, and I really like Peacemaker in that trailer as well. So watching it a bit more, I enjoyed the trailer a lot more, right? So my initial reaction was pretty bad, but now I'm kind of warming to it at least. After all, it's only a piece of marketing, right? But I think the first half of the trailer, the song's really slow, placid, too much banter at the beginning. But once the pacing of that song kind of revs up and you see a lot more awesome moments, I really enjoyed it. So, you may or may not know this, but Sylvester Stallone is one of my favourite people in Hollywood. I grew up watching Rocky and Rambo, and it's really cool that him and James Gunn are mates, and he appeared in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and his voice at least is going to appear as King Shark in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which is really, really exciting news. Sylvester Stallone confirmed to voice King Shark in the Suicide Squad. James Gunn officially confirms Sylvester Stallone voices King Shark in the Suicide Squad and shares the DC villain solo character poster. James Gunn confirms Sylvester Stallone voices King Shark in the Suicide Squad. For the first movie in the DC Extended Universe, Gunn has assembled a huge cast of characters. The Suicide Squad features the return of Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, and others from David Ayer's 2016 movie. Jay Courtney, by the way. Jay Courtney as Captain Boomerang, who doesn't seem to play, he's not prominent in the trailer at all, which was disappointing as well. So Gunn also took full advantage of the Task Force X concept by infusing the upcoming DCEU movie with the several new obscure DC villains. The new additions to the Suicide Squad include big stars like John Cena, Idris Elba tackling the deadly anti-heroes Peacemaker and Bloodsport, respectively. It will also include Polka Dot Man David Dastmalchian, Ratcatcher 2, Daniela Melchior. By the way, be nice to Daniela on the internet. She's really nice, and she keeps on saying, I hope you like it. So if you didn't like it, don't go and tell her that. She seems such a lovely person and a talented person, by the way. So be careful how you talk to all people, by the way. And more as part of the main team, as per usual with one of Gunn's movies. The Suicide Squad features some additional actors who have worked with the director in the past. Sean Gunn, Michael Rooker, Nathan Fillion and Steve Agee are a few examples. It was also revealed previously that Stallone was part of the comic book movie after collaborating with Gunn on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. At the time Stallone revealed his involvement in the DCEU movie, the movie was already done filming, which left fans to wonder who the A-list action star was playing. After the debut of the Suicide Squad first trailer, Gunn confirmed that Stallone's voice was heard in the footage. Stallone officially plays Task Force X member King Shark in the movie, and Gunn shared the King Shark character poster as part of the announcement. And there you go. So in case you're wondering who the Shark is, it's at the Sly Stallone, King Shark, the Suicide Squad. Sylvester Stallone, this is what he said. Okay, Shark coming your way. The Suicide Squad is thundering your way. August the 8th. James Gunn, the Suicide Squad, Warner Brothers Pictures, Margot Robbie, blah, blah, blah. So that's really exciting to hear because I think Sylvester Stallone is one of the most prolific people in Hollywood. What he did with Rocky and Rambo. And he's such an underrated writer-director as well as an actor, by the way. How this guy's never won an Oscar before. And I know you're going to laugh, but I truly believe he's a multi-talented guy. Stallone might be the voice of King Shark in the Suicide Squad, but the legendary actor wasn't physically on set to bring the character to life. Similar to how Gunn used his brother Sean to be on set for Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy, Agee performed the motion capture for King Shark in the Suicide Squad. This allowed Stallone to be brought in later on and simply provide the voice similar to how Bradley Cooper does for Rocket. Prior to this confirmation, many hoped Taika Waititi would voice King Shark in the Suicide Squad and bring some of his humour to the character. Instead, Stallone's gravelly voice brings a completely different energy to King Shark. The character still has some comedic beats in the Suicide Squad trailer, maybe too many, but he's also featured in some of the trailer's more violent moments, where it is eating soldiers or ripping them in half. I like that bit, actually. King Shark is already lined up to be quite the scene stealer, having Stallone's voice behind the CGI. Shark should only add to him standing out in the Suicide Squad. Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about the over-comedic element, but this is James Gunn, and this is the MCU pattern, of course, of King Shark being over-comedic. He's supposed to be a frightening figure, a bit of a villain in the comics as well. And it's cool that Stallone's doing it. And the comedy with him is funny, what we see. But I hope he's not all laughs and no seriousness. It'll be very interesting what Gunn does with this character. Because from the moment I heard King Shark was in this movie, I couldn't have been more happier. And by the way, from the first time I heard James was involved in this film, I was excited. And I'm still excited to see what this film has to offer the DCEU. So for those of you who keep on saying, talk about Starro, we're going to talk about Starro now. I wasn't ignoring you. There's been so much Snyder stuff to talk about. It's been difficult in the past few weeks, hasn't it? But we're going to do it now because this is Suicide Squad time. we're getting the hype. A DCEU movie is being marketed and plugged. Of course, I'm going to talk about it. What is Suicide Squad's Kaiju? Monster DC villain explained. The Suicide Squad's first trailer reveals a Kaiju threat for Task Force X to face. Here's an explanation of Starro and how he fits in to the sequel by Cooper Hood of Screen Rant. The first Suicide Squad trailer reveals the movie's Kaiju villain. Here's an explanation of Starro's role in the comics and how he'll factor into the DC Extended Universe film. James Gunn's retooling of the Suicide Squad franchise is one of the most anticipated movies of 2021 after an extended wait to see real footage from the movie. DC recently released the Suicide Squad trailer online. The trailer highlights how DC's all-villain team reconnects in the sequel and its many new members. And by the way, someone else I didn't mention, Rick Flag. Great to have Rick Flag back. Loved him in the first movie, and he looks like a big part of this team, so I'm happy he's in it as well. Official details on the Suicide Squad story have been mostly kept under wraps until now. The film's official synopsis highlighted the new Task Force X roster. It will feature, led by the return of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn and new additions of Peacemaker, John Cena, Bloodsport, Idris Elba. The synopsis confirmed that the main mission of the movies revolves around the Suicide Squad travelling to the remote island of Corto Maltese. It teased that the island is filled with enemies, but neither Warner Brothers, DC Films or James Gunn confirmed exactly who was the Suicide Squad's villain. So let's have a look at what Cooper's got to say. The lack of confirmation on the Suicide Squad's villain led to many theories about who Task Force X could potentially face off against. There were previous plans for Black Adam to be the villain, but that was before Gunn took over the project. Some footage from the Suicide Squad showed various members of the film's multiple Suicide Squad teams fighting each other, which sparked speculation that one version of the team could have gone rogue or been corrupted by another foe. Thanks to the Suicide Squad's first trailer, we now officially know who the movie's villain is. But are we saying that Starro, a starfish, is actually going to be the main villain of this film? James, I don't know how you're going to pull it off, mate, but I can't wait to find out. Although this is the first trailer for the Suicide Squad, eagerly-eyed fans spotted a tease of the movie's real villain from the footage shown at DC Fandom. The moment briefly showed a purple starfish attached to the face of a soldier. For DC fans, this immediately signalled that Starro, the Conqueror, could be Suicide Squad 2's villain. There was some doubt that this was correct at first, but the Suicide Squad's trailer confirms it is accurate. Pictured on the screen in the image above, Starro is officially the main villain of James Gunn's DCEU villain movie. But hang on. Cooper, how do you know that? There's no confirmation. James hasn't confirmed this, that he's the main villain. Are we saying that this CGI starfish after all? And I don't know nothing about this character in the comics. Someone can let me know in the comments down below, whether it's in the premiere comments now, if it's going live, or later on. Whatever, man, let me know what's going on here, because I don't know nothing about Starro. Starro doesn't have a prominent role in the movie's trailer, but the end of the footage undoubtedly confirms the creature is Task Force X's biggest threat. I don't agree. Starro is shown emerging from a tower on Corto Maltese and presumably destroying the structure as he reveals himself. Those at Belle Reve Prison see Starro's debut as they monitor the villain soldiers under their command. One of the workers proclaims that the team now has Kaiju to fight. Starro can briefly be seen in the background of this moment as its giant starfish shape is featured on one of the monitors nearby. The trailer stops short of showing any members of Task Force X try to attack Starro, but one of the monster's giant arms crushes a car as it starts moving across the island. As evident by its appearance in the Suicide Squad trailer, Starro is a giant starfish monster who is a powerful villain from DC Comics. The character was created by Gardner Fox and Mike Sekowsky, however you say it, in 1960, when Starro the Conqueror debuted in The Brave and the Bold 28. Starro is a Justice League level threat who is a starfish-shaped alien that had mind-control powers. I see. The villain is obsessed with conquering worlds and attempts to do so by sending agents of his to the desired planet of universe. These agents attach themselves to living species, which allows Starro to influence their thoughts, so they follow his commands. Very interesting. He sounds more interesting now and unique, don't he? Starro is a dangerous threat due to his mind control abilities, and is a difficult enemy to truly defeat. Starro can regenerate his body as long as a piece of him remains, allowing him to repeatedly come back from in the comics. There are examples of Starro even becoming more powerful after regeneration. In the New 52 comic continuity, Starro's powers grew to the point where he no longer required his face spore agency to control others. The giant eyeball at the center of Starro's body and his will was all he needed, then to telepathically influence people. Some of Starro's other abilities include fight, biofission, duplication, and energy projection. The villain is also practically invulnerable, especially from man-made weapons like bullets, missiles, and nuclear bombs. Wow! Now that Starro is confirmed as the villain of the Suicide Squad, Task Force X will have their hands full to try and finish the movie alive. And after saving the world from the giant starfish, it's no secret that the members of the Suicide Squad aren't the most powerful group of villains ever assembled. Most of them are skilled due to weapons or fighting, but that won't really work against Starro unless the Suicide Squad nerfs the character's power levels. While that might make Starro a confusing villain choice at first, it could be one of the ways Gunn ensures that the movie will have a high death count. Yeah, good point there, Cooper. This mission might literally be a suicide mission, as Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Ratcatcher, Polder Dot Man, King Shark, and others don't have the individual powers to bring down a massive monster like Starro. The monster's mind control powers could also explain why the US government and Amanda Waller sent Task Force X in to stop Starro's invasion plans. If they fail, every member of the Suicide Squad can be killed using bombs implanted in their necks. But it also prevents more powerful heroes like members of the Justice League from falling prey to this influence. Zack Snyder's Justice League teases that could go wrong. What could go wrong if someone like Superman was controlled by a villain? So imagine what Starro could do if he enslaved Wonder Woman, Aquaman, or others to his cause. Meanwhile, those who are part of Task Force X have limited power sets that wouldn't turn the tide in Starro's quest for domination. So how are they going to beat Starro then if he is the main villain, as Cooper is saying? This is really interesting. The presence of Starro also could explain why the Suicide Squad could see two versions of Task Force X fight each other. There are teases of Peacemaker and Rick Flag fighting in the DC fandom footage. One of them could be under control of Starro at that point, forcing the two Suicide Squad teams to battle each other. This could even force members of the main team to kill former teammates who are now under Starro's control. A fight between the two Suicide Squad rosters would be a more evenly fought battle and help keep the Suicide Squad somewhat grounded in its third act until Starro becomes the central focus. Very, very good, Cooper. Some good theories there. So at first I thought, Cooper, you're talking shit. How can Starro, a starfish, be the main villain? But then when you think about it, he's got telepathy, he's got mind control powers. And I know a lot of you people out there keep on saying to me, Starro is awesome. He's going to be a great villain, Mick. Just you wait and see. So I'm going to just wait and see about that. So actually just reading that gets me even more hyped for this movie. Gunn knows how to make these films entertaining, epic, awesome, and a little bit funny. I was just taken aback from my initial reaction from that trailer. But the more I watch it, the more I'm getting into it now. Look, as I've said earlier, James does what James does. And I'm here for it, to see these different kind of interpretations of these DC characters. And I'm very excited to see more. But how are they going to beat Starro? As I've said, could there be more powerful heroes that we haven't seen as part of the team? I suppose only time will tell. Remaining on the subject of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which I'm really excited to do, by the way, Craig Elvey of Screen Rant has 33 story reveals. The first trailer for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is a horribly beautiful, immensely exciting thrill ride. Here are the story reveals found within. So this should be quite interesting. The first full trailer for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad has finally arrived, and there's an awful lot to digest, literally in King Shark's case. After the disappointment of 2016's Suicide Squad, I wasn't disappointed, by the way. Calls to release the air cut are ongoing, but despite the original film's poor reviews, there was something worthwhile in the concept of B-list DC characters accompanying Margot Robbie's twisted but charming Harley Quinn into certain depth. Hoping for something better, James Gunn, fresh from his temporary Marvel firing, was put in charge of the Suicide Squad. Can I ask you a question? How comes everyone fell in love with Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn? Was it in Birds of Prey? No. It was in that studio tampered with version of David Ayer's movie. That's where everyone said, Harley Quinn is amazing, Margot Robbie did a great job. Without that film, that tampered with version, we would never have fallen in love with her interpretation of the character. So that says something about that movie. In lieu of the straight sequel to the 2016 movie, The Suicide Squad, in a soft reboot of sorts, still firmly within the dceu framework, The Suicide Squad introduces a mostly fresh batch of desperate anti-heroes, mixes in a few favourites from before, and thus ensues a brand new, albeit just as suicidal, mob ready to die on behalf of Uncle Sam, or perhaps Uncle Sam's disowned half-brother twice removed. Due to release on HBO Max on August the 6th, a new trailer formally introduces the world to Hollywood's Task Force X 2.0, and the result is a glorious explosion of dysfunction, guts, fireballs, and a giant starfish. The Suicide Squad's first trailer is generous in revealing key story hints, the first glimpses at the new characters, while teasing the offbeat dynamic between the various personalities in this mammoth cast. Despite the dizzying blitz of action, the early signs are very promising indeed. Here are all of the story reveals in the Suicide Squad's big trailer. The Suicide Squad bus pulls up. The Suicide Squad's trailer begins with the titular group's bus pulling around a city corner. The vehicle is appropriately run down and painted a garish blue with yellow stripes. Given the decor, the van seems to have been commandeered by the Suicide Squad in the middle of their mission. James Gunn previously confirmed that the Suicide Squad's new misadventure would take place on DC's fictional South American island of Corto Maltese, and the Suicide Squad's fun bus could be tearing through the streets of the island's urban capital. Moving inside the van, the Suicide Squad offers the first look at Idris Elba in action as Bloodsport, known to his friends as Robert Dubois. DC Comics' Bloodsport is a skilled assassin and supervillain, and functions here as Task Force X's new Deadshot, basically, yeah. Essentially, Elba's character is seen tossing out guns to his teammates and pokes fun at John Cena's Peacemaker for his toilet-themed headgear. Interestingly, Elba is dressed in a bloody vest, while the other squad members are in similarly casual clothing, suggesting the gang might lose their trademark super costumes at some point during their escapades. First look at Peacemaker, Rick Flag, King Shark and more. Like the cool kids at school, the Suicide Squad's trailer makes its way to the back of the bus, revealing even more new faces. John Cena's Peacemaker is sporting a fetching polo shirt to go with his signature well-polished helmet, and he's parked next to Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag, one of the precious few returnees from 2016's Suicide Squad. Staying quiet in the rear seat are Peter Capaldi's Thinker, the CGI King Shark, and David Dastmalchian's Polka Dot Man, hurrying to get himself dressed. Harley Quinn has been captured. The Suicide Squad's current mission is to rescue the captured Harley Quinn. It appears that at some point during the Suicide Squad's insane plot, Quinn is taken by enemies, and her colleagues decide to break from their primary objective in order to free her. Bloodsport is on board with this change of plan, and Flag insists that even Task Force X never leave one of their own behind. Building upon his working relationship with Harley Quinn from the first movie, Peacemaker, on the other hand, can't believe that the mission is being compromised for a mental defective dressed as a cool jester. Probably best not to say that to her face. There's no indication of who was brave enough to kidnap Quinn, but Flag is heard hoping she's still alive. On Waller's desk, Ratcatcher and whatever that is, TDK's files can also be seen setting up their future involvement. Amanda Waller returns. On the other end of the walkie-talkie is Viola Davis reprising her role as Amanda Waller, the architect of the original Task Force X. Waller was told in no uncertain terms to cease off her book's operation by Bruce Wayne. Clearly, she didn't listen. Waller is safely stationed at her command center, headquarters, but remotely reminds her colonel, no funny business, although the trailer's editing suggests Waller is directly referring to Harley Quinn's rescue mission. This wouldn't make sense if the squad had deviated from their objective to save her. Team 2 are elsewhere. A key detail hidden in Amanda Waller's first trailer scene confirms the inclusion of a second Task Force X. While Waller talks to Flag's group over a walkie, a nearby monitor displays a CCTV feed for another squad in transit. This group consists of Jay Courtney's Captain Boomerang, Nathan Fillion's TDK, Michael Rooker's Savant, Fleur Ball's Javelin, and the several others. This B team are in entirely different military transport, separate from Flag's Big Blue bus. The shot effectively confirms that the Suicide Squad's cast will be split into two for most, if not all, of the movie. Why do you think there's two lots of Suicide Squads? Why do you think he's doing that? I will explain it to you and give you my theory at the end of this article. Storming a government building. As the aforementioned bus reaches its destination, the strangely dressed Flag, Bloodsport and Polka Dot Man descend upon what looks like an official government embassy. Amanda Waller's voiceover reminds Flag that these are dangerous people and are talking into account other details in the trailer. Harley Quinn might have been seized by the evil military government of Corto Maltese, led by the dastardly Silvio Luna. Another member of the team, most likely Daniela Melchior's Ratcatcher 2, but her face is covered with binoculars, acts as a lookout on a nearby building. And Peacemaker is seen tucked snugly into a bell tower, his sights trained firmly on the action and his denim shorts riding up relentlessly. Harley doesn't need a man's help. Oh. Anyway, just as the operation to save Harley Quinn is about to commence, the Birds of Prey herself emerges from behind Rick Flag, casually greeting her buddies as if nothing ever happened, covered in blood and clutching a ceremonial flagpole. Harley has apparently managed to liberate herself, but she's touched when Flag tells her about the rescue plan. Throughout her DCEU history, Harley has been let down by supposed allies, so she's genuinely moved by her friend. A rival even offering to go back in and get recaptured. Bloodsport points out how patronising that would be, and the pair are introduced for the first time in this scene, confirming Harley and Bloodsport are both recruited for the Suicide Squad's original team. This sequence is interlaced with footage of Amanda Waller and her agents wearing expressions that fall somewhere between shock and annoyance. But these won't necessarily line up with the Harley sequence in the finished movie. Michael Rooker's Savant shows his skills. The Suicide Squad's trailer turns its attention away from the Harley Quinn mission and into the cosy confines of the high-security jail. As everyone knows, the DCEU's Amanda Waller sources her Task Force X subjects from dangerous convicts, and this opportunity is taken to introduce some of the film's fresh faces. First up is Michael Rooker's Savant. Rooker, who previously worked with James Gunn on Sliver and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, sits in a prison yard and ricochets a ball perfectly off numerous red crosses painted upon four walls before making the final catch effortlessly. In the DC Comics, Savant is an expert hacker and digital vigilante, but he can add serious catch skills to his resume. In the Suicide Squad, Pete Davidson's Blackguard. Also languishing behind bars is Peter Davidson's Blackguard. The comic book character is somewhat of a joke baddie whose evil plans are often ruined by his own stupidity, and the Suicide Squad allude to a similar flaw for the DCEU character, with Davidson bashfully picking toilet paper from his bright orange Crocs. It's not a great look, least of all in a prison environment. Sean Gunn's Weasel. Finally, Sean Gunn's Weasel is spotted licking the glass of window of his cell before realising he's been watched and deciding to stop. Sean has featured in several of his brother's movies, most notably playing Kraglin in the Guardian of the Galaxy films. Weasel, real name John Monroe, is a murderer who dons an animal costume in the original DC Comics run, but the Suicide Squad turns Monroe into a grotesque, scraggy, and anthropomorphic beast instead. He's the Rocket Raccoon of the piece, just not as cuddly. That's true. The explosive injection. Hopefully explaining the premise of Task Force X, the Suicide Squad's trailer shows Savant being brutally injected with an explosive in the base of his skull, courtesy of Amanda Waller. This is the traditional method for blackmailing the Suicide Squad into complying with their assigned mission. As Waller's voiceover explains, any insubordination or defiance will result in the injected bomb detonating, killing any of the convicts instantly. Should any of the Task Force X recruits prove successful, however, they'll be rewarded with a decade slashed from their sentence. From the horribly beautiful mind of James Gunn. As the newly assembled Suicide Squad pour out of a military van, they saunter in front of a giant, conveniently placed American flag from left to right. The lineup includes Weasel, Blackguard, Mongol, in Mailing Ning's first proper appearance, Javelin, Captain Boomerang, TDK, and Rick Flag. This particular division is the P team, even previously on Amanda Waller's screen, but with the addition of Flag, once again driving the idea of two separate Task Force X's being deployed in the Suicide Squad. Quite what this iteration are sent to accomplish remains to be seen. I'll tell you in a minute. But the footage does at least show Jay Courtney wiping orange mud from his boot with the edge of a boomerang. It's Weasel poop, isn't it? Dunno. The epic shot shows Savant and Blackguard in their supervillain costumes for the very first time, with Rooker donning a red vest with dark googles and Davison sporting a kitted out black number with plenty of firearms attached. Both quite far removed from the comics. Interestingly, Savant refers to the Suicide Squad as famous in this sequence, suggesting the Enchantress mission earned Waller's Warriors a degree of infamy. In certain circles, as taglines go, few are as encouraging as from the horribly beautiful mind of James Gunn. Jay Courtney returns, which I'm really happy about because I thought he was brilliant as Captain Boomerang in David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Speaking of which, the Patriotic Assembly gives a first up-close look at Jay Courtney's returning Captain Boomerang. The unkept Australian debuted in 2016's Suicide Squad before sort of making a cameo in 2020's Birds of Prey. Rarely out of trouble with the authorities, it's no surprise that Boomerang is one of the few original Suicide Squad members to still alive and willing to participate in another headfirst leap towards certain doom. The character's costume is changed up with a beanie hat and his boomerang projectiles attached to his chest for easy access. Nathan Fillion's TDK. Aside from Captain Boomerang, fans also get more closely acquainted with Nathan Fillion's TDK as he sips a refreshing can of Turn's Head Pib. Dressed in his skull and crossbones costume, TDK is a superhuman with the uncanny ability to remove and regrow his limbs. Wow. That'll come in handy. Fillion is a cult favourite actor among comic book fans, and his casting in the Suicide Squad comes with no small amount of excitement. Harley with a bazooka. Harley Quinn and rocket launchers are the peanut butter and jelly of the DC universe, and Margot Robbie's character gets to play with her favourite toy in the Suicide Squad. This scene likely comes inside the movie's third act, a big battle taking place in the jungles of Corto Maltese. Nom nom. Harley Quinn isn't the only member of Task Force X wreaking havoc in the exotic jungle setting. King Shark creeps up behind an unsuspecting villain, probably who knows with this lot, and gleefully says nom nom before picking the enemy up and taking a well-deserved bite. The Suicide Squad's trailer makes clear that the two-legged sea monster is the story's CGI comedy character, like Groot, but far more murderous. Amanda Waller's handler back at HQ, played by Steve Agee, is suitably disgusted by King Shark's snack. It'll be interesting to see what stops King Shark from eating friends as well as foes. The Suicide Squad briefing goes well. Practicing social distancing before it was cool, the Suicide Squad's next trailer scene shows a briefing between Amanda Waller and her new recruits, including Bloodsport, Ratcatcher 2, Polka Dot Man, King Shark and Peacemaker. This is the other half of Task Force X, the ones who won parading in front of the American flag previously. Perhaps the sequel's mission is a dual strike, or maybe one team dies. Oh, you took my thunder away. That's the whole point. Oh, we'll talk about it in a minute. And another is forced to clean up the mess. Either way, the briefing could go better. King Shark struggles even to understand the concept of raising his hand. Realizing their peril, Bloodsport points out how likely is it that the whole team will die, to which Polka Dot Man hilariously replies, I hope so. This scene is almost probably a precursor to the Harley Quinn rescue mission and Corto Maltese mission, since each character is replete in their full superhero gear. The Fellowship's journey, not the most plot-driven shot, but perhaps the most stunning in the entire first trailer for the Suicide Squad. Bloodsport's team, Ratcatcher, Peacemaker and King Shark, are visible here, trek through the rainforest of Corto Maltese upon the backdrop of a beautiful jungle sunset, somewhat reminiscent of the Fellowship's iconic mountain crossing in Lord of the Rings. Interrogating Finka. As we all know, Peter Capaldi's in this film, which I'm very excited about as a Doctor Who fan. One of the most brain-scratching moments in the Suicide Squad's trailer is the interrogation of Peter Capaldi's Finka, echoing the technique of Rory in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Rick Flag tells the Finka that if the squad fail to complete their mission, he dies. Bloodsport then assures Finka that if he feeds the squad bogus information, he also dies, before Harley Quinn chips in with a few stipulations of her own. No personalised number plates, cover your mouth if you cough, seems fair enough. The exchange is played for laughs, but Finka obviously isn't a trusted member of Task Force X. Perhaps Peter Capaldi encounters Flag's unit midway through their mission, then joins in time to save Harley in the background of shot. An unknown ally to the Suicide Squad could be spotted, played by Julio Ruiz. The military ensemble. The military assemble. As Team Bloodsport head into battle, a huge military presence led by Joaquin Cosio's Major General Suarez begins to coverage. This would be the armed guard of Silvio Luna, the tyrannical president of Corto Maltese, portrayed by Juan Diego Botto. With the Task Force X apparently sent to eliminate the South American dictator, this trailer moment proves the ragtag amalgamation of villains and vigilantes are vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Bloodsport is the leader. Yeah, I noticed that as well. That was interesting. Why isn't Rick Flag the leader of this team? Bit weird. For those who always wanted to see Idris Elba and John Cena talk about dicks, the Suicide Squad has you covered, advancing through the jungle with Ratcatcher 2 in tow. Peacemaker reminds Bloodsport of his responsibilities as leader at this stage. Rick Flag has either been taken elsewhere or is yet to join up with Bloodsport and others. But whatever the case, it's interesting that Elba's character is considered second in command. Oh, I get it, okay. Told to eat a bag of dicks by his commander, Peacemaker proudly proclaims that there's no amount of penises he wouldn't gobble down in the name of freedom, establishing the comically patriotic slant of his character. Nightclub relaxation. Now, as we know, in David Ayer's Suicide Squad, there's a scene in a bar where they sit there and drink. This seems a very similar nod. There are a couple of nods to David's movies, which is really respectful of James Gunn as well. One of the most memorable scenes in 2016's Suicide Squad comes when the various Task Force X members gather in an abandoned bar. It's a rare moment of reflection when the larger-than-life characters drop their collective guard and finally bond. 2021's equivalent seems to be a nightclub sequence where Bloodsport's half of the Suicide Squad visit a pulsing nightclub for a rare few hours of relaxation and downtime. Polka Dot Man and the Peacemaker can both be spotted on the dance floor. Unsurprisingly, the latter's moves could use some work. Buildings collapse. In an elaborate CGI-heavy action sequence, Harley Quinn, Polka Dot Man and Bloodsport run from collapsing building, leaping out across the falling rumble alongside King Shark. Quinn still looks to be wielding her flagpole here, so the scene likely slots in after her bloody escape from captivity. As for why the structure might be mid-demolition, a later trailer shot may hold the answer. Alice Braga's as Soul Soraya. It's only a quick glimpse, but the Suicide Squad's trailer showed Alice Braga's Soul Sorcerer brandishing a rifle in an opulent palace. So Soria is the leader of the local resistance movement on Corto Maltese. hatefully opposed to the leadership of Serial Luna. Naturally, this makes her a begrudging ally to the more outlandish Task Force X. Bloodsport attacks Waller. Yes, I didn't realise it was him, but we do see someone attacking her with a sharp object. Probably taken from an earlier scene. In the Suicide Squad, an orange jumpsuit-clad Bloodsport lunges towards Amanda Waller's throat with a pen. As part of her recruitment process, Waller has apparently invited Idris Elba into her command centre, where she'll offer the opportunity to reduce his sentence as part of Task Force X. In a predictable show of strength, the supervillain seizes a nearby writing implement and makes his move just to prove he could kill Waller if he wanted. Waller's steely demeanour shines through, however, as she remains unmoved with the nib only millimetres from her neck. King Shark shows his strength. Not to be outdone by the badassery of Bloodsport and Amanda Waller, King Shark appears tearing a soldier from Corto Maltese military in half with his bare hands in a hail of blood. Upon the backdrop of a violent storm, King Shark's big trailer moment is visually stunning and proves the character's raw, uncontrollable strength heading into the Suicide Squad. The chopper goes down. More chaos in the midst of the jungle assault as a military helicopter crashes through the trees, sending the soldiers on the ground running for cover, whilst member of the squad brought in down. Sending the soldiers on the ground running for cover, which member of the squad brought it down? Harley with her bazooka. The twirling chopper is interlaced with an unrelated shot of the Suicide Squad's armoured truck in a spin. The red lightning suggests this is taken from Amanda Waller's video feed from earlier, and Captain Boomerang appears to be one of the unlucky Task Force X members stuck inside. Harley on the attack. In a John Wick-esque moment of gunfight precision, Harley Quinn takes down military goons galore with a pair of handguns before a colourful explosion of flowers erupt behind her, calling back to the bright colour scheme of Birds of Prey. This platter of bloody violence looks like part of Quinn's escape from the government before the rest of Task Force X arrive to lend a hand. Bloodsport's promise. Quiet moments are in short supply, but one of the Suicide Squad's few tender trailer scenes features Bloodsport promising to get Ratcatcher 2 out of Task Force X mess alive, only for her to respond with, "I'm going to get you out of here alive." This scene teases the kind of personal connections between cast members and that went undeveloped in 2016 Suicide Squad. Did it? Anyway. The conversation also proves Bloodsport's willingness to step up as a leader, but teases Ratcatcher as the group's secret weapon. Starro in the DCEU. The big climactic reveal of the Suicide Squad's trailer is the DCEU arrival of Starro with an electric comic career that includes being an early villain for the Justice League and a sidekick to Batman. Wow! Starro's presence in the Suicide Squad was heavily rumoured after his fishy likeness was spotted in promotional images. Starro is now confirmed as the film's main threat, smashing down buildings and smashing up whatever his 5 limbs can reach. The trailer doesn't explain Starro's origin story in the DCEU, but given that he appears on the Isle of Corto Maltese, the freaking Kaju could be an experiment from Silvio Luna's captured Nazi facility, and the real reason Task Force X were chosen for the mission. Starro's design is authentic to the DC Comics, and if he retains his traditional ability to manipulate the minds of others, this might explain why a second Suicide Squad team is called upon. The first half of the Suicide Squad's cast got their epic walk towards camera moment against the American flag. The rest of the gang get theirs in a dramatic whirlwind of rain. This second lineup includes, from what can be seen through the water, King Shark, Ratcatcher 2, Rick Flag, Bloodsport, Harley Quinn, Peacemaker, Finka, Polka Dot Man, and possibly Julio Ruiz's unconfirmed character lurking to the far right of shot. Harley likes the rain. Would it really be a Harley Quinn movie if Margot Robbie didn't say something kooky and inappropriate? In one final sting from the Suicide Squad, Roche's trailer, Quinn knows how much she loves the rain because it's like angels are splodging all over us. A lovely mental image to end on. So that's pretty much a description of the whole trailer. Wow, that was pretty awesome, wasn't it? Right. The person who did this article basically hit it on the nail on the head. There's 2 Suicide Squads, there's 2 separate groups, because one's going to die and one's not. It's a clever way, but also a predictable way, because if this is the case, then you know who's going to die. Basically, I'm assuming the team with Harley Quinn and Rick Flag and all them are going to survive, and the other team are going to be brown bread. But who knows? Who knows what could happen in this movie? It's just a thought for now. And this is pretty awesome. The Suicide Squad comic creators cameo confirmed by James Gunn. James Gunn has confirmed that John Ostrander, creator of the modern Suicide Squad comics, does in fact have a cameo in the film's trailer by Rick Stevenson of Screen Rant. The new trailer for the Suicide Squad features a great Easter egg for eagle-eyed fans, a cameo by the original Suicide Squad comics creator John Ostrander. The new film, directed by James Gunn, acts as both a loose sequel and soft reboot of David Ayer's 2016 film, which featured an ensemble cast including Margot Robbie, Will Smith, Viola Davis, Jared Leto and Joel Kinnaman. A lot of those stars are returning in the Suicide Squad, which releases in theatres and on HBO Max on August the 6th. Like the 2016 film and the comics on which it was based, the Suicide Squad follows the escapades of Task Force X, a covert team of captured supervillains who perform dangerous missions in exchange for time commuted off their prison sentences. Gunn's film includes a number of classic DC characters, including Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, and the Finka, Peter Capaldi. Staying true to the title of the movie, Gunn has said that not every character will reach the credits alive. And this is the thing, if you're going to call a team Suicide Squad, some of them have to die, right? The new trailer for the Suicide Squad includes a well-deserved cameo appearance from Ostrander, the writer who created the modern version of the team for DC Comics. James Gunn confirmed the cameo in a tweet, saying that it only makes sense that the actual creator of the Suicide Squad is the one to put the bomb in their heads. And it helped that John Ostrander was actually a former actor. Ostrander's inclusion is a well-deserved show of respect and a fun inclusion for long-time fans. Check out the tweet below. Did you see him in the trailer? It only makes sense that the actual creator of the Suicide Squad is the one to put the bombs in their heads. And it helped that John Ostrander was actually a former actor. And Gail Simone comments down below, it makes me so happy to see the respect for John Ostrander in this movie. A great guy and a brilliant writer. So that's brilliant. So going off the trailer, the Suicide Squad looks like to be fully embracing its R rating, blending the whimsical style and offbeat comedy of Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy films with darker, bloodier overall feel. The tone is perhaps most comparable to Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool films. Hopefully the Suicide Squad can find a similar level of success, combining dark comedy with stylish action. After the successful release of Wonder Woman 84 and an overall positive response to Zack Snyder's Justice League, the future of the DCEU is looking brighter than it has in a long time. With the highly anticipated films like the Robert Pattinson-led The Batman and Ezra Miller's The Flash coming in 2022, there's a lot for DC fans to look forward to. The Suicide Squad is the next theatrical release to drop for the franchise, and it looks like it has the potential to be one of the best DC films yet. Well, actually, before I press pause and come back, can it be the best DCEU film ever? I think in terms of kind of visually and entertaining-wise, this could be one of those films that you come out the cinema or finishing it, watching it on your telly and say, wow, that was an energy-sapping, amazing film. You know, it's hardcore, it's fun. That's what James Gunn does. And that's probably what you're going to get from this movie. I expect this film to be enjoyed by a great many people, and I expect it to be a huge success. And these are the kind of things Walter Hamada needs to be a success, because he's the one who went out on a limb and brought James Gunn in when James Gunn had been fired by Disney. So this has to work for Walter Hamada. But most importantly, Flashpoint has to work for him, or he's finished. Oh my God. 1 hour and 8 minutes. I didn't notice. Anyway, let's hope they upload it. If they don't, we won't be having this conversation. Anyway, our final piece of news for today is Static Shock movie hired safety writer Randy Mickinon. The Static Shock movie takes another step toward production as they hire Randy Mickinon, writer of the film Safety, on Disney Plus to pen the script. I don't know what Safety is. Again, comment down below and tell me, is this guy any good? By Nicholas Graff of Screen Rant. The Static Shock movie takes another step forward, producing after hiring safety screenwriter Randy Mickinon to pen the script. After only seeing Static in comics and animated form the past few decades, the electromagnetic hero has a large fan base hungrily awaiting the character's debut on the big screen. The story of Virgil Hawkins and his journey to become a supercharged superhero may sound like something audiences have heard before, especially when his origins involve a radioactive gas. But with the right script, Static Shock could end up launching a point for a whole new universe of comic book films. Let's hope so. Now that McKinnon is on board, the wheels are moving again on the movie, which had seemed a bit stagnant for the past few months since the announcement of Michael B. Jordan as the producer back in October. With producer Reginald Hudlin, Jordan is hoping that Static Shock could launch a cinematic universe for black superheroes, likely pulling in other characters being published alongside the Static Shock character by DC's recently relaunched Milestone Comics imprint. And with DC's The Flash movie likely to introduce the DC multiverse, there's a strong possibility that Static Shock universe could eventually be linked right back to the main DCEU, which would be amazing. The Hollywood Reporter broke the news of the writer being found for Static Shock, stating that McKinnon was best known for his work writing the screenplay for Safety, a feature that debuted on Disney Plus in December of 2020. In the film, McKinnon tackled the true story of Clemson University freshman football player who brought his little brother to live with him on a campus due to problems back home. Before that credit, McKinnon's biggest claim to fame was as a staff writer on the Netflix horror series called Chambers. It is likely that McKinnon was considered for the role after he worked with Static Shock producer Reginald Hudlin on Safety. You see, I don't know any of these projects. I don't know if this creative is any good. I suppose we'll soon find out. McKinnon has his work cut out for him, as there is only 1 decade of Static Shock material to sift through. But more importantly, there is the weight of what Static represents to keep in mind. Milestone Comics was founded in 1993 by a group of artists and writers who sought to create comics after better represented minorities. And with Static being their signature character with Milestone's recent re-emergence, the movie's producers looking to build a universe of diverse heroes. This first movie has a lot of work to do in order for that dream to come true, adding the extra challenge of Warner Bros. And DC considering an HBO Max exclusive release for Static Shock, and it becomes clear the film needs to be something truly special. All films need to be that, especially if they are going to make a case to the studio to release it in theatres as well as streaming. Why not? If it's good, if it's epic, it's awesome, why not? Whether or not the cinematic version of Virgil Hawkins lives up to the standards of the fans and the original creators of Static Shock may not be entirely up to McKinnon and his script, but his work will be the foundation the rest of the movie will be built upon. For a movie with so much riding on it, choosing a screenwriter with only 1 feature under his belt seems risky, but it could make sense if Hudlin and McKinnon have a good rapport and were already working on ideas while on the set of Safety. Fortunately for Static Shock, the film does have Michael B. Jordan on board as producer to help steer the ship and share his experience with other blockbuster films he has been part of over the years. Fans will just have to hope that will be enough to get Static Shock produced the way it should be. Right, it's no issue with someone not having a big CV. I remember the Hollywood Reporter saying just before the release of the first Wonder Woman 2017, that Patty Jenkins didn't have much experience. It was a risk. But look at the film. I mean, I don't think the film's as awesome as it is just because of Patty. And I've said that before. But she did a great job with the directing. And she's very passionate about the character as well. Never judge people on their experience. It's what's inside you that matters. If you stayed with me thus far, 1 hour and nearly 14 minutes, right? I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you and giving you my opinion on the current state of the DCEU before we go for the day. I believe the current state of the DCEU is a fucking mess. I think the DCEU has been a fucking mess since its inception. That doesn't mean I don't love it. It doesn't mean I don't love the actual films. I nearly love all of them. I even kind of like Birds of Prey to a point, right? That's not the point, right? This isn't a constructive universe with strands and continuations. It is a mess with so much behind the scenes turmoil brought to the public. It is a mess, right? And let's look at its inception. It came off the success of the Dark Knight trilogy, right? David Goyer goes to Christopher Nolan while they're writing The Dark Knight Rises. I've got a great idea for a Superman movie. Nolan, with his influence, takes that idea to Warner Brothers and say, yeah, cool, you're Christopher Nolan, David Goyer. Look what you've done for us. You've brought us in loads of money. That's great. So they write the script and they go, well, we don't, Chris says, I don't want to direct the movie. I don't think I'm capable of directing a Superman movie. So he gives it to Snyder. And this is where the problems begin. Zack Snyder is such a talented auteur director, but he makes decisions of his own. Basically, he doesn't make decisions in mind of audiences or studios. He does what he wants to do and he fights for it. And by hook or by crook, he'll get that done. And that's the issue. Now, if you're making an indie movie, that's fine. That's great. Nobody fucking cares. I'll tell you why nobody fucking cares, because big money, you're not expecting anything from a little indie movie. That's why Bryan Singer did the Usual Suspects and got away with it, but it became a big blockbuster. Snyder did 300. Nobody thought it'd be successful. It was. Snyder did Watchmen. That was very controversial, but again, did okay financially. And so from the moment Nolan said, this is Snyder, I want Snyder, and going forward in this franchise, I want him to run it. This is what Nolan was saying. The studio should have said, no. I love Zack. You saw my tears earlier, genuine tears. But they should have said no, because this is not what they wanted. They wanted a commercially vibrant franchise making as much money as possible. You're never going to get that with Snyder. And I know his Justice League movie is beautiful and awesome, as is his BVS movie, as is his MOS movie, right? That's not the point. Excuse me. The point being that DC and WB wanted an affluent commercial franchise. And as I've just said, you don't get that with Snyder. So already you've got a fucking mess. You've got a director that does things a certain way. So every time this guy does something, no, change it. No, change it. No, I won't change it. No, change it. No, I won't change it. Already you're in a mess. BVS gets done. They cut half an hour from his film. The actual finished product it makes no sense. The original theatrical cut is still a great movie, but it's only when we see the extra half an hour and the difference it makes. And if people saw that, we wouldn't have had as much of the polarizing kind of reaction as we did. So it begins a mess. Then you've got David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Again, they don't like it. They make him do reshoots and rewrites. Again, we're in the middle of the mess. BVS, Suicide Squad, bad reaction from critics, right? So then the studio, I remember studio executives saying to me, I don't know how much of these toxic reactions we can take. And that was ringing in my ears. I thought, fucking hell, man, they're going to really mess with Snyder now because they're scared. They're understandably scared. The reaction was terrible. They had to do something. Now, what they did was ridiculous, but they were acting out of fear. And so the angry, crazy situation that was going on. And all of a sudden, Zack's not doing Justice League. We're not getting a Justice League 2. We're not getting a Justice League 3. We're getting a 2-hour Joss Whedon Justice League movie, which is insanity when you see the finished product. So it's ridiculous situation after ridiculous situation. And now we're here. We're at this junction where the franchise doesn't make fucking sense, right? So you got Man of Steel, BVS, and Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. They're one universe. They make sense, right? David Ayer's Suicide Squad is part of that universe. It makes sense. Wonder Woman 2017 is part of Zack's universe. That makes sense. We just saw her in BVS, right? Justice League kind of makes sense because they're in that universe still, right? But it's a mess. That situation should never have happened. Aquaman, again, from Justice League makes sense. If you see Zack Snyder's Justice League and James Wan's Aquaman movie, there's a few differences, as we saw in that film. But James Wan made a beautiful movie, and I absolutely adore that movie. And Brett Colt made a great point the other day. I saw a very old video of his talking about that film and him saying that it's about talking to the scariest people, so that if you can unite with the scariest people, then a real victory is made. And I love that. So you got Aquaman, Shazam, all very good superhero films, right? But it's a mess. It's now a mess, right? So what are they going to do? After Justice League, right, they could have just said, fuck this is a mess. Let's just reboot and start again. Just let's leave this franchise for dead, right? And whatever movies people want to enjoy and watch, do it. They should have left it behind. They should have burnt it to a crisp, but they didn't. They went from Justice League to Aquaman because they pretty much already made that movie, right? They could have even rebooted through Aquaman, right? It would have been weird, but they could have rebooted the whole thing with Jason Momoa. Just start again, right? They could have done so many things, right? But they didn't. They continued on this path. So it's disaster after disaster after disaster. So what are they going to do now? We've got James Gunn's The Suicide Squad coming in the summer. We've spoken a lot about that already. But Flashpoint is the film. Flashpoint, they're taking this film Flashpoint to pretty much burn down what they don't like and keep what they want to, right? So basically this film, what this film has to do, it has to break down the walls of the multiverse and say anything DC that's ever been done is interconnected. They're going to do that, right? So it's all interconnected. But because Barry creates this new world and then he fixes it, certain things can be burnt down that Snyder created, that the Justice, or whatever they're going to do to make sense out of all of this. So after that film, the DCEU will be very different. These HBO Max TV shows will be connected. It will be a very different universe. So then you've got the fight to restore the Snyderverse, a big complication for Warner Media and especially Warner Brothers Pictures, because to their point of view, they just want to leave the Snyder situation behind because it complicates things for them, because they have now got a plan to burn down Snyder's universe, or most of it, right, apart from Aquaman and Wonder Woman. And Ezra Miller's The Flash, of course. So there's a complication. But Zach's kind of saying, that's all right. Do what you want. I'll have my little Elseworld. It still exists, but it's not part of your universe. We're kind of divided now, which can work. And I would obviously be so excited for. But to them, it's all a complication. They want to walk away from Snyder and us, his fans. Of course, I'm also a DC fan, so they wouldn't lose me, right? And I know that would upset some people. They wouldn't lose me at all. But this is a situation now. It's such a complicated situation. And Ann Sarnoff, with that Variety interview, made it worse. I understand what she was trying to say, but it didn't come across very well. So she wants to concentrate on this central universe. They've got this multiverse strategy, some really ambitious plans, and they want to go forward with it. But there's a passionate group of people, including me, that are fighting to extend Snyder's run. And when you trend with over 1 million tweets, that complicates the issue even more. So what is my result? What is my thoughts right now when I finish off this conversation about the state of the DCEU? As I said when I began it, it's a fucking mess. Some wonderful, great movies with some very talented creatives, but the fucking universe is a mess. And someone has to come in and say, right, stop, enough already. And they're kind of doing that with the multiverse strategy, with Flashpoint, which is kind of exciting if they get it right. That film has to put this franchise on a new trajectory. Now, the fight to restore the Snyderverse will go on, no doubt, maybe even for years to come, which is a depressing thought. Now, if you just separate Snyder's verse with the rest of the verse, that can be done. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if they're going to restore the Snyderverse. But this situation should never have came to be. They should have thought about this very seriously. The old regime of Warner Brothers Pictures and DC Entertainment started this fucking mess. It was a mess. It was complicated. You had Jeff Johns and other figures thinking, Jesus Christ, you had all these cooks in this kitchen, and some wanted to make tomato soup. Some people wanted to make onion and leek soup. And in the end, they just put tomatoes and onion and leek in, and it's a fucking mess. And you know what? All they had to say is, no, we don't want Snyder. And I don't want you to misunderstand me with that. But this mess was created by bringing in an auteur who doesn't give a shit about big box office or commercial success. But the studio does. And if you're going to do that, you've got to bring someone in like Hamada or Feige who's going to aim for those heights. And this is what they're aiming for now. But you've got people who've experienced Man of Steel now, Batman versus Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League is now loved by everyone who's ever watched the film. So they're in so much trouble now. They've got to focus on this central universe, but it doesn't hurt for them to restore the Snyderverse. What the future holds, I don't fucking know. Don't ask me. I'll be back tomorrow. Comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. And I will be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. The question is, will 1 hour and 24 minutes upload on YouTube? If you don't see this, it didn't work out. Bye-bye.